You're listening to theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
Hello and welcome to the first in the autumn-winter series of podcasts from the Outdoors Station. We've had a bit of a break during the summer, and as you can tell, I'm out of doors, running at the moment with Rose on the Malvern Hills because we've got a week to go before the next OMM, Original Mountain Marathon, the one that used to be called the Kim. Thought I'd do this to share some of the decisions and tortuous process we've been going through to try and reduce weight and still keep within the rules of the event. And we're certainly having a few pack issues at the moment, which I'll explain a bit later on. But in this podcast, we've also got two interviews. Andy Howell took a trip to the Pyrenees earlier on the year, and he sent us a piece with someone who's well known on the OM forum, which he'll explain. And I interview Nick Mayell from the Shadowhawk Tracking School. With quite an interesting interview and discussion about if there are actually any needs for trackers these days in this country, which is got a bit more of a story attached to it, as you'll hear. Anyway, first, let's keep pounding away on these hills. We're on a 3-hour run if we can at the moment. I'll explain more about the event and gear and so on a bit later on, and I hope to record the event as well as best we can whilst taking part. But first, let's hear from Andy and the comfort of a hotel up in the High Pyrenees.
Thanks, Bob. I've just come back from an early summer trip to the High Pyrenees. I've come back with notebooks full of memories, tons of digital photographs and loads of audio files, which later in the year I hope to convert into a podcast. But it struck me that because this was such an early trip, that some of the things that I recorded and picked up there would be useful to anybody planning a trip to this fantastic mountain range later in the summer or in the early autumn. Now, first up, I started my trek this year in Cotteret, which is an important town for anybody walking the GR10 or the high route long distance trails, or indeed anybody who's walking at all in this part of France. It's an important supply town, and most people spend 1 or 2 nights there one way or another. Now, normally in Cotteret I would stay in one of the excellent campsites in town, but partly because of a night flight and arriving very tired in France, I decided this year to treat myself and to stay in the small family hotel, the Hotel Chantilly, that's owned by Mary and Philip Lenerhan. Now, Philip is well known to many people who read the Outdoors Magic website. He's not only a hotel owner, but he's a passionate mountain walker. So while I was staying at his excellent hotel, I took the opportunity to have a chat to Philip about not only working and living in the Pyrenees, but also about his love of the mountains. Philip, that was excellent last night, just what we wanted after a long day's travel. Nothing fancy for hikers, but just nice and comfortable and a nice warm welcome. You enjoying yourself here in Courtrai?
I am, working too hard, but it's good, yeah. We're enjoying ourselves.
Now, the most discerning of listeners will notice that's not a French accent, so how on earth did you get to be here running the hotel?
Well, we moved from Ireland over to England for a few years, and at the time we thought, we sold our house in Ireland and we decided, well, will we buy a house in England or will we move on? My wife's always wanted to move to France, and so I said, well, we can move to France, but it has to be the mountains. So we basically just looked for somewhere in the Pyrenees, and we knew this area a little bit because we came here skiing a couple of times with my wife's family, her sister's married to a Frenchman and lives in France as well. So that's how we came to discover the Pyrenees.
Now, you're a lover of mountains and mountain walking, aren't you? And do you still manage to get out very much? Because it must be very demanding running a hotel, because you've got a winter season with skiing and a summer season.
Yeah, I do get out occasionally. I've been 3 times this year. It's usually only for a night or 2 nights maximum, because I'm the chef here as well, so I have to cook their lunches, and we kind of play by ear. So at the moment it's quite quiet, so I got out this weekend and did a bit of wild camping up at Lac d'Ardatil, and a couple of weeks ago I managed to cross over to Spain. Half enough.
That's great. Now, we were talking earlier, and I think you're somebody like me. I love the Pyrenees, and in many ways I prefer them to the Alps. What is it about these mountains that's just so attractive for a mountain walker?
Well, it's less touristy, it's more natural, but I suppose it's more French as well. It's kind of like retained its identity, whereas a lot of places in the Alps, I mean, although they're beautiful, I've been there before and I've skied there, but there's a little bit of there's a little bit more of snobbery around the Alps than there isn't here in the Pyrenees. It's a bit wilder here. There's bears. They think there's wolves here now again. They've seen the traces. So there's just a bit more, as I say, a bit more of a vie sauvage.
That's interesting, wolves. I mean, are they being reintroduced naturally? Or?
No, they've actually, apparently, they saw last year around by Vignemal, apparently, somebody recognised the footprints of the wolf, and they've actually crossed over from Italy. They've crossed over from Italy to the Alps. But they do think they've actually come over from Spain or Italy over to the Pyrenees. They've not been sighted, but they've seen the footprints. Not many.
That's fascinating. The French often say that the Pyrenees are plus sauvage, more wilder than the Alps, and that seems to bear that out.
Oh, yeah, it does, yeah.
Now, running a hotel here must be quite demanding, but, Cotteret is one of these almost quintessential French mountain towns, isn't it? It was a spa town originally, and it's a really nice, pleasant place to be. It's not too posh, a good base for families and family holidays, but a lot of walkers and hikers as well.
Yeah, well, it's a good base. It's central because you can go over, Refuge Island, you've got Vignemal on the doorstep, you can cross over to Spain, you're not far from Gavarnie. I mean, it's a good centre. You can do a lot of people come here, do a 6-7 day walk, starting here through over to Spain in 2 days, so and come back via Gavarnie, Bristol, Roland. So it's a good centre, and it's easy to get to with public transport.
Yeah, so couple of years in, it's been a good move, has it?
A good move. Tired. We've done a lot of work. We work very hard, and we do get tired, but it's a good move.
Well, we would normally have stayed in a campsite last night, but because we had such a long day's travelling, we thought, no, let's spoil ourselves. We're on our holidays, and it was great. So anybody looking to stay with you, how would they get in touch?
Well, usual thing: the telephone, email. We've got a website. We have had problems, I think, with our English website, but we've got our email address, telephone, fax.
And the website is
www.hotel-cotteret.com.
And it's the Hotel Chantilly.
Hotel Le Chantilly, yeah. That means the creme de la creme.
Well, great, Philip. We've had a lovely stay, and thanks very much. And I'm sure we'll be back again.
Hope so, and enjoy your walk. I'm jealous.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed my stay with Philip and Mary, and if you're in Cotteret this summer or this autumn, you could do a lot worse than check them out. I think they'd be particularly helpful if you're not that confident with the French language, because they can generally explain to you how things work in the Pyrenees and also point you in the right place for picking up important supplies, food and fuel and that kind of thing. While we're on the subject of supplies and fuel in particular, this year I think I found a cheap and effective solution to one of the perennial dilemmas facing anybody who's camping or backpacking in this part of the world. Namely, which kind of stove systems to take with them and which kind of fuel supply to use. Now, these days, I guess, most of us use canister stoves. But one of the problems we have in the French Pyrenees, and indeed throughout much of Europe, is that you're far more likely to find the blue French camping gas canisters than the Coleman-type canisters that we're used to using in the UK and indeed in the USA. And the two have very different screw thread systems that are not interchangeable. Now, there are some solutions to this. You can buy an MSR Superfly stove, which is adaptable and can use either system, but it's a bit pricey. Or you can buy a cheap and effective, but rather bulky and weighty adapter from a number of British retailers. To be fair, it's a lot easier these days to find Coleman gas thread canisters in France than it used to be, particularly since Camping Gas of France took over Coleman a couple of years ago. Certainly in the major towns and in the major outdoor stores such as Intersport, you can usually find 3 or 4 Coleman gas bottles. But the higher you get up into the mountains, the more unlikely you are to find them. Indeed, sometimes it's difficult to find even the blue camping gas canisters. On a number of occasions over the years, I've got to a high campsite and bought the last blue camping gas canister, and I've always wondered what happened to the poor soul who struggled in a couple of hours after me, desperately looking for gas. Now, some people get around this problem by taking with them a multi-fuel stove that can run on white gas or diesel or unleaded fuel. Indeed, I've done this myself in the past, but these are very heavy and, again, quite cumbersome. This year, I decided to dispense with both the gas canister stoves and the multi-fuel stoves, and I took with me a small diminutive meth stove, a white box stove which weighs only 30 grams. Meths is easily available in France, but you don't find it in outdoor stores. You'll find it in one of the hardware stores or bricolages that you can find in any small French village or town. Indeed, in many places you can find it also in supermarkets. When you go into one of these stores, ask for alcool de brûlé, or burning alcohol, and somebody will nip in the back and probably come and bring you a 1.5 litre bottle of meths. Unlike the UK, this stuff isn't dyed, so it's a colourless liquid, but it burns just as effectively, although it does have a different, I find, more pleasant smell to the meths that we buy here. And the 1.5 litre bottle that I bought in Cotteret cost me less than €2 and would have lasted me probably as my sole fuel supply well into a 2-week stay. But as I say, there's no problem finding this alcohol de brûlé in any small village or small town. I think it's a very cheap and very cost-effective alternative to canister stoves, and I think it's one that also gives you a lot of peace of mind. So if you're worrying about fuel or where to get gas canisters this summer, have a look at the white box system. Very flexible, very effective, and very cheap. Well, there are just a few things that I wanted to share with you after my early trek this summer. I've got the rest of the summer and the autumn to pour through these audio recordings, and hopefully I'll be able to piece something together that's both interesting for you to listen to and useful for anybody planning a trek, or particularly a first trek to the Pyrenees, over the next year or so. Bob.
Well, thanks, Andy. Here we are, we're still pounding away on the hills, Malvern Hills, which is our local range, which is useful for training, even if it is a bit painful at times. Where do I start? Right, the mountain marathon is 2 types of events, orienteering based, over 48 hours, so you have to carry all your own gear. You have to carry a tent, you have to carry food, you have to have enough left over and fuel to have a meal at the end of it. You have to have appropriate waterproof gear, safety equipment, etc, etc. And you all have to stash this in as smaller and as light a bag as possible. Now, Rose and I did this event, how many years ago, Rose?
Oh, about 2, I think.
2 years ago. And we were carrying the, the Kim lights then, but now the OMM 25 sack. And I was carrying the classic, the 35. Should we just slow down a bit here? Have a chat. Which we filled to the hilt. They weren't as light as we could go. We've learned a lot since then. I think it was probably 3 years, actually, 3-4 years ago. Learned a lot since then. And now we're trying to strip everything right back and get them into the Go Light VO24s. But we do have a bit of a problem. The problem is just the bulk of the gear and trying to stash it down. If these rucksacks were another 5 litres or more bigger, they'd be perfect. Now, the reason we're not using the OMM bags is that Rose is petite, I am tall, and the bag is a standard unisex length. So it's short on me and very slightly long on Rose, which just rubs against her neck occasionally, although we both love the bags and what you can stash in and how flexible they are. So we thought we'd go for the Go Light range because of the back length, and it seems to be the only one. Salomons or Innovates don't have different back lengths either. And although the bag fits perfectly, and we've been training with, what have you been training with, about 5k in your bag?
Yeah, about 5k.
5k, and I've had 6. I had 7 in mine, and I found 7k just painful as regards actually getting into a good pace with running. But we've had a bit of a dilemma today. This is our last weekend before the event, and Rose just can't quite get the amount she needs in her pack, and I can't quite get the balance in mine. It leaves the pack being very, very, very tight, almost like a drum, that the slightest accident, just worried about the tension actually splitting the bag. So we've really got to cut back somewhere. But to give you an idea what we're using, as you all probably heard, we're using walking poles. We're using the new Mountain King Trailblaze walking poles. They've just come out. We've got the first ones off the production line. They're a fixed length pole. Mine's 220, 120, yours is 110. They break down into 4 sections with a cord down the centre, and you just unhook the cord and it just pops down, and pull the cord tight and it pops into place, a bit like a tent pole actually. Flex a bit certainly. We've been using the Lecky carbon light poles to train with, but this is the first time we've actually got our hands on these. We've got a week's practising, but I think they're pretty good. How do you feel them?
They're really nice actually. You really notice the difference in weight, although the Lecky ones are really light. These are like, wow, really light.
Yeah. So that's definitely noticed. But they flex slightly more, don't they? Naturally, they will do. They're supposed to be in the diameter of the. I think they're 11mm diameter tubing.
Yeah, and just noticed up on the ridge too, the wind really catches them.
Yes, you've got to be careful you don't fall over them. But no, very pleased with those. So that's great. I've also got on loan the new Pyrenees lightweight smock, which I'm looking forward to using. But obviously that means it's going to have to be raining. I'd normally use my my Montaigne Superfly.
Which I'm taking mine.
You're taking yours, which is lighter to be fair, but it's a great opportunity to try the new Velez. I've got the traditional one, and this one's got the hood's actually sewn in, which will make life a bit easier. Very, very slippy material, different sort of material to the standard Velez, but certainly it feels good at the moment, but that's obviously stashed in the bag. Yeah, it is. We've got problems with rucksacks, basically. We're juggling at the moment on this training run. Rose has actually gotten to her VO24, which is now packed okay.
I like this because it runs well. You know, I can run with it and it stays close to my body,
yeah.
Whereas the 25, although I really like the 25, it just moves too much on me. I can't pull the straps tight enough.
Well, when you pull the straps right down, they're right against the hip belt, aren't they? So,
yeah.
So you're not actually achieving anything. So you can't actually get it tight.
No.
And the 32, the classic on me, the actual straps are clips are underneath my armpits, which is very, very painful. Which means that the rucksack is obviously halfway down my back, which is not comfortable. So what am I using? Well, I'm using the good old-fashioned Go Light Jam, the Dyneema-based jam. And as they say, if you have more space, you fill it. And I'm desperately trying to just put the same amount of goods items in there, and there's certainly plenty of space, but because it's physically a bigger pack, it's definitely the 45 litre size pack, it's actually very, very large to run with, and I'm certainly finding a stability issue is my biggest concern. Also, because I've taken an item out of Rose's pack and put it into mine, it's now 9k. Now that's not the base weight, that's everything, that is the whole lot. Waterproof gear, food, water, walking poles, cameras, recording equipment, the whole lot comes to 9k. And I've been training with a maximum of 7, so I need to somehow shed something. It's a packing exercise, really getting back to packing exercises. Made a couple of modifications to the rucksacks. We've put the good old strapper map to me devices on the shoulder harnesses, which means that these poles can be folded down in seconds and just clipped straight to the shoulder harness. That's worked well, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's going to be really useful on the race next week.
And then the other one will be used for the map, so that'll tuck the map out the way. The other thing that we've tried to cut down on is tent. I've made a tent by combining a couple of things together. The rules are that the tent's supposed to have a sewn-in ground sheet, but it doesn't specify whether it's a single skin or double skin. So I've taken an MSR Twin Peaks, which is a 2-pole tarp tent. These poles will support the tent, so that's that sorted. And I've sewn in a ground sheet, made a ground sheet with a bit of space around the outside of it, and sewn it in with shock cord so that we can have a very compact tent and not worry about that extra layer. We have to carry bivy bags with us anyway, and so consequently if there's too much condensation and too much moisture coming off the inside of the tent, which it might do, then we'll put the bivy bags over the top of us, which will also add to a bit of the heat as well. But otherwise, gear-wise, we've just strapped it right back, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm sure next week we'll have time to go over it in detail as we sit in the tent after the first day, but...
Indeed. Okay, so let's carry on with our running, and I will now bring in the interview with Nick Mayell, who is from Shadowhawk Tracking, which is one of the sort of bushcraft-orientated companies which I met at the Wilderness Gathering earlier on in the year. And I first of all started off by asking Nick if there actually was a need for a modern day tracker in this day and age in the UK. I'll catch you later.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I spend a lot of my time tracking for insurance companies, whether it be vehicles. Search and rescue organisations are using trackers more and more. And obviously, you know, it expands further than that into anti-poaching, into the tracking down criminals, etc. So, yeah, there is a big need for it now.
I find that quite surprising, because I mean, I like the idea of the skill and the knowledge and the sort of understanding of your environment and be able to spot things, but I wouldn't have thought, perhaps naively, I wouldn't have thought there would be that much need to track a vehicle. I mean, surely a vehicle's easy to track?
Well, you'd think so, but, you know, we're living in a situation, in an electronic world now, and a lot of vehicles, I track mainly plant machinery, which seems crazy, where somebody can hide a digger in the woods, but not at all. We get situations nowadays when machines are stolen, criminals know that they have tracking devices, they take them to a large woodland, disconnect the battery, and then leave it, knowing that the device will go flat. You've got two choices. You can either go in and search, which is a very labour-intensive thing to do, or you can go and track it, and that's what I do. I have a tendency to find out where the last known track was from the satellite company. I go there, I do a perimeter cut, I see where it could have got in, where it could have got out. That might be 2, 3, 20 locations, mark them, and then that's what I do, is park up, put on a backpack, and I'll explore those 20, 30 entrances, ins and outs, and inevitably you can't pick up a machine that size and just make it evaporate. It will be there, and once you pick up the trail or a change in the baseline, usually you will not fail to find it. In 3 years I've never not found a machine in the woods.
Congratulations, that's quite an achievement. So how do you work in a situation like that then? Do you sort of like have a team of police with you and some dogs as well, or are you just solely on your own? Just solely on my own.
What tends to happen is it doesn't come from a police. Generally it's an insurance company will ring and say, you know, we have a vehicle that we're looking at trying to find. They give me the details of the tracking company, where it was last seen, and then say go to work, and I'm basically on my own until I actually track it down and find it, in which case then obviously hand it over to the police and they deal with it accordingly.
And when you're actually working and doing this sort of thing, just sort of paint a picture for our listeners. What sort of gear are you carrying? Are you sort of fairly laden, or are you just, you know, very lightweight, the other end of the scale?
No, very, very lightweight. Trackers don't want to be burdened down with heavy kit, because the whole essence of tracking, not so much with vehicles that are stolen, but for instance, if we're tracking a person who's, it could be an Alzheimer's victim, or a child, or a despondent. The whole purpose of tracking is to close the time-distance gap, so that we catch up with them. So carrying heavy kit's going to slow me down. Long cooking methods are a nightmare. So, you know, you want to cook quick meth burner, something like that. I tend to camp if I'm going to either throw a tarp up in the trees if I need to, or a lightweight tent, you know, something like the Go Light, or you know, the Shangri-La 3. It's very light. I can stick it in a backpack. You don't even know it's there. So that's how I tend to travel, and most trackers are the same.
I presume, just in case you come across an area where there is activity, you've got to be fairly stealth organised yourself.
You have to be very careful. I mean, you know, you could stumble if you're not careful on people while they're there, and they're never very, you know, they're not sort of people you want to mix
inviting,
with.
Are they?
Not at all. And I've had a few run-ins, and I've been run off the road a couple of times, and yeah, they're not very nice people. But you know, my skills, I'm very quiet. Generally people don't know that I'm around. They're the ones making more noise.
Right.
So no, I think I'm fairly safe.
So you're an instructor with Shadowhawk.
That's right, yeah.
Tell me about the type of people that come on the courses and what they expect to get from a course. And in one course, can they pick up enough skills to really move ahead, or is it a gradual education process?
It's a gradual process. I mean, I've been doing it sort of most of my life, and and I've been teaching for 5 years. And you know, sometimes I think I'm scratching the surface because it's a big subject. But we run all sorts of courses. The most popular is the foundation and intermediate, and we do those back to back, so people have 4 days of intensive tracking. By the time they leave us, we're fairly confident that they can identify a track or a compression shape, and then start linking several tracks together so they know the direction of travel, and understanding a little bit about the animal's behaviour, or a human. If they're looking for a human, you can tell if they're if they're flagging, if they're injured without food, injured or whatever. So they leave with a toolkit that they can grow on, and then after that we run various courses. It could be tracking wolves in Poland, or wildlife tracking in Namibia, or Portugal. So it expands from there. We also run in the UK advanced courses if people want to take it to the next level, and also scout courses if people want to remain in the woods for long periods of time.
Sure. What the average person that's coming on the course then from the UK?
Yeah.
Is there a generalisation? Are they sort of generally sort of hunters, and they want to understand their prey more? Are they just general interest people that have got an interest, a desire to learn more about their environment?
Do you know what? It's all sorts. I mean, yes, you do have people that want to hunt, but by the same token, we have people from film crews, we have wildlife enthusiasts, we have photographers. We've recently had a couple of authors. In fact, somebody wrote a book based on one of our courses. So yeah, from all walks of life and all ages. I mean, it's not for a specific person. It's tracking. The beauty with tracking, and it's cheap, and anyone can do it.
It's all knowledge, isn't it? Knowledge is power, and all that.
Knowledge is power, and so long as it's used for the right reasons, I think it's great.
Yeah. Coming on to the wilderness gathering, the show. It's obviously the first time we've come down. I've been sort of quite taken with the vibe of the place. It seems unusual in this day and age to actually have an outdoor show where you can actually live outdoors while you're at the show.
Yeah, it's unusual. I mean, I think it was probably the first of its kind in a major way, and I think Roger's done a fantastic job. And when I first came 5 years ago, I mean, it was 300 people, and I think this weekend we've had about 3,500 through. So it's getting bigger, and we're seeing a lot of different people. It's not just sort of a core of bushcrafters. We're seeing people from education authorities and wildlife reserves and game rangers and stuff like that. So no, it's really good.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see them actually come down, actually have one central place to pick these sort of skills. Sort of, at least certainly in this main arena there's a good dozen or so schools all offering different types of courses, although it comes under the same umbrella, and it's good to see them all popular.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's quite a range of bushcraft schools and that. Shadowhawk's slightly different in as much that we are a tracking school. People that want to learn probably friction fire lighting and that sort of thing. Although we can teach it, it's not we are solely a tracking school. So, but down here you're spoilt for choice.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I'd like to say was ask you about was your Max.
Yeah.
Your head honcho there. Tell me a bit about Max and what's going on there.
Well, I met Max about 5 years ago, and it was at an event like this, and I've had a passion for tracking, which it was kept within. I have two passions in life: fly fishing and tracking. And if people said to me, "Oh, what should you do for a hobby?" it was always fly fishing, and I was always a bit dubious about mentioning the tracking side of it, and because people go, "What?" But no, I bumped into Max, and I got to do a few courses, and I learnt quite a lot from Max. He's an incredible tracker, and he asked me if I'd come and help and go on the instructor program, and basically it snowballed from there. So it's a massive learning curve. I mean,
because he's been doing it for a while now. He's just starting a TV series, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got a TV series coming out on September the 7th at 9 o'clock. That's on Animal Planet. It's called Max's Big Tracks. And that'd be really good for people that are just sort of dipping their toe into tracking, just to have a look and see what it's all about. He's got I think it's 7 series over the next 7 weeks, and he'll be in a position where you'll be able to watch him track jaguar and rhino and sort of all sort of exotic animals. I think he's gone to the Himalayas, and it covers all over the world. So and I think I think he's done a program in Poland on wolves, and that should be really interesting, because that's the cunning, most ultimate animal, if you want to. Yeah. So no, he's been very busy. So hopefully things will slow down a little bit, and we'll be able to spend more time doing courses. But no, it's good, and it brings tracking to people's forefront, and it's become more acceptable now, and that's really important.
Well, thanks to Nick and Andy for their contributions. Links, of course, in the show notes to the hotel and to Shadowhawk Tracking as well, for those interested in finding out more. Apologies for the silence over the last couple of months, but we have all been out trying to do things and have a life, as well as produce a podcast and share the love. Glorious day today, and as you can tell, I'm going uphill now, not downhill, because I'm walking. If it's like this next week, it'll be very pleasant, but frustrating to carry all the waterproof gear and have no need of it. Still, you've got to have it. Anyway, that pretty well brings this one to a close. We'll be back with some more very shortly. Certainly recording the event next week as best we can, give you an idea of what it's like and gear, and if you can talk to any of the other people, organisers and people at the different events, I'll explain more about that in another podcast. Perhaps I'll do a gear review before I go. But that just leaves us now another hour to get back to the car, take everything apart, and work out if we can stash it in two 24-litre bags. And that is the frustration at the moment. So, catch up with you very soon. Bye.
Bye.
This independent programme is produced and hosted by theoutdoorstation.co.uk.